Amy has to show her video.
I just ran in from soccer practice.
Thanks, Amy.
I'm not really
Thank
ready for the
you.
meeting. So I say hi.
Hi.
Can I
Hi.
go back now that I'm there? We go. Yay. Made it by almost
All
a
right.
couple minutes.
We're gonna open up the meeting for September 15th at 5:38 for the Workforce Housing Committee. First order of business is the approval of the minutes. Did anybody have suggestions or corrections from the minutes that Scott sent out?
Nope.
All right. No suggestions. We'll approve the minutes and move to our first agenda item, which is updates from the subcommittees. The Education and Outreach Committee reviewed the current draft affordable housing plan that Daphne combined with, I think, content that the Strategy and Finance Committee had. Our last meeting, we reviewed the FAQ. Nobody got their homework done, so we still have to write all of our responses to the FAQ. If this group is interested, we can include the FAQ questions, and if you want to send your own kind of draft responses to Daphne, then we can kind of add them together in our collective draft that we'll review at our next meeting. That's where we're at with education and outreach.
Hey, I have a question. So
Yeah.
you mentioned there is a draft document that Daphne put together. That isn't the same draft document that Strategy and Finance are working on, is it?
I don't think so. This is like the new hybrid one that's shorter. Like we had like a super long one for education and outreach, and this is a much shorter one.
Can that one be shared with the subcommittee on strategy and finance, and then we'll share after tomorrow's meeting? We can share what we've put together so far.
Yep. I'm checking in the folder now if she has two drafts across the two. But that was the long one. No, we've kind of got one. Okay, it's in the Education and Outreach Subcommittee folder, and it's the draft affordable housing plan. And Scott, can we include a link to that one in maybe an email? I don't know if we can put it in the meeting notes or not, but
that would be great. And then I'll try to take a look at the FAQs. One request I have is if a question could be answered with yes or no, that the first word be either yes or no.
You betcha.
followed by an explanation.
Yeah, the plan was we wanted to kind of incorporate everybody's different perspectives on it, and that would let us kind of have a similar answer, but maybe tailored to who might be asking that question. How might we answer it in a way that is palatable, understandable, and concise for that audience? But yeah, yes or no, definitely. So currently it's like questions that Daphne has seen a lot at the Plan Commission meetings or like review meetings about like how does this impact sustainability? How does it impact schools? How does it impact fire and EMS? Why don't we have a plan for condos? Why can't people build condos? How does this impact parking? Is everybody going to be parking on the street now? Is this money that we could better spend on something else? Those are all questions that we want to address. And then we did spend some time on the glossary, like what does affordable mean? What does housing burden mean? And then concepts that we have been trucking in for many meetings: area median income, naturally occurring affordable housing, and then some of the government programs at play, like the low-income housing tax credit, and probably including explanations of how the TIFs work and what they are. Yeah.
Okay. Jeremy or Ben, would you like to give an update on what the strategy and finance subcommittee is doing?
I'll give a quick update.
Our last meeting was early August. Our September meeting is actually taking place tomorrow. In our August meeting of the Finance and Strategy Subcommittee, we had a draft put together. I believe Lisa put it together a brief draft, which is a compilation of all of the ideas we put together in the brainstorming board that Lisa had also put together at the meeting prior. And throughout that August meeting, we talked about the first few pages of that draft, talking about things we liked or really liked or didn't like so much, and some notes and questions about how some of those details are worked out. Our meeting tomorrow is 1.5 to 2 hours long, and we're going to go through the rest of the draft and really hammer out all of the concepts, ideas, and strategies that we like most and want to most include in the document, reorganize it depending to our preferences, and have a finished product that I think will be very, very similar to what the final document will look like.
Very good.
Sounds like
Yeah.
a beefy meeting. As the who is Daphne or Scott? Are you the staff person on those meetings?
Abby is a staff person on those, but I've been attending all of those as well, just
Ooh, that's
to
fun.
help lend some experience to it.
Okay. Yeah, if the link to the document and language gets sent out after that meeting, be good to see as well. And maybe between Daphne and Abby, we can get the one master document going.
That would be good.
Sounds good. Lisa, are you planning to, after we go through all of that, to take the first crack at winnowing that down based on those discussions that we've had so far? Or would you like me to take the rough draft and make the
If
edits
you,
that we talked about in the meeting?
since I won't be able to attend all of tomorrow's meeting, I'll only be there for a real short part of it because I have finance and personnel at 6 and I'm doing this chief's chat with the police chief at 5. If you could pull up the Google Doc, Scott, and just make the edits in there, that would be great. I added a section at the end. All the ideas for priorities came from some other document, right? And they're all noted to show where they came from. And some of the ones, Jeremy mentioned that there were some we liked and some not so much. We spun some things off into like someone's already doing this, right? Planning staff usually. And then also not feasible given the cost, complexity, or an anticipated low impact. And then over the weekend, I was working on incorporating my comments and Ben's because he had shared some written comments. And so another one is outside of scope, right?
Okay.
Maybe worth doing, but it's outside of this project scope.
Sounds cool, like a considered but not doing, and here's why.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Any other questions for the strategy and finance group? Okay. A quick discussion recap of Becky Bynes, the housing and equitable development planner from Sun Prairie, came. We didn't have enough for a quorum, but we were still able to have her present, and we got to ask a couple of questions of her with what they're doing over in Sun Prairie. I think it was just Jeremy, Lisa, and
I think, weren't the three of us there? I can't remember if Amy was there. Amy, were you at Becky's presentation?
Sadly, I was not. I had a obviously unplanned hospital stay for several weeks in August.
Oh
So I'm
dear.
catching up from that.
Oh my gosh.
Mostly better. Back at home anyway, so that's exciting.
Okay.
But I was not
That's
there.
good.
I've watched the YouTube though.
Okay,
So thanks for
good.
posting that.
I thought it was super useful,
Yeah, agree.
especially the parts about, like how her salary comes from the housing fund. And she said if the referendum that Sun Prairie is going to have this year doesn't pass, then more of her salary will have to come from the housing fund. And I know here in Middleton, the tendency is to like not include a new staff position unless it's sustainable over the long term. And even an $11 million or $10 million fund would not be considered sustainable for hiring a new staff person if we want to spend the money on other stuff. So she also was getting some from TIDS and the general fund, so that's a good information to have. She talked about the challenges to new housing development being land availability, which if it's a challenge in Sun Prairie, oh my goodness, it's really a challenge here. The cost of development inputs, no control over over those, and then the opposition based on misconceptions, which I think your FAQs, that outreach and education is really important. And then I also loved that their plan is very high level general policy. And she mentioned that the council tended to get bogged down in the details, and I could easily see that happening with us as well. So there's got to be a way to provide enough detail so that the council members feel like they understand what the consequences of different choices would be, but also keep it kind of light on detail because part of the job of a new staff person will be to, well, I hope we'll hire somebody who knows a lot about this topic and can hit the ground running. So those are my notes from her presentation. Oh, also that they were emphasizing the taking on the things that were significant market failures, like where the private sector is not performing. And there was a lot of emphasis on owner-occupied housing. The 4 recommendations were the loan program for new affordable owner-occupied, and then a loan program for rehabilitation of owner-occupied, housing case management, which is, that's kind of like the discussion we had with Way Forward Resources about what they do to make sure that we're not just putting people in a box. They get the supports they need and the coaching they need, guidance in order to stay in that home. And then the housing planner salary. Those are the 4 recommendations, and that it seems like a small number. I think she said they had $160,000 to start. So we'll be able to do a lot more. I'm excited.
And we asked if she had our size kind of fund, what would she have done differently, right? And I think it's more, can't remember the exact words, but I think it's more on, on the land, land and the owner occupied, right, piece.
Yeah, it was helpful to get her take on, what do you think the best way is to pitch this to the council? What barriers exist in your community? That it was interesting that some of her challenges I don't see or experience as much in Middleton as far as residents being resistant to some of it, but maybe that's just the meetings I go to. But the case management was interesting to hear about how they finance and contract that out. And especially in light of what we heard from Way Forward, that there is a kind of a need for additional case management support and not just building the boxes. Yeah. Oh, the other thing that she talked about that was a strong point in Sun Prairie was their housing coalition that they had built. So this was a separate group with kind of separate membership that was more of an advocacy. So there was people from their kind of Way Forward comparable called Sunshine Place, as well as representatives from the school district and other stakeholders. And those people would go to more of the planning and review meetings to advocate for the projects and additional housing and provide that kind of perspective at those meetings. So for us, maybe something to think about if that is a group separate from this one, a net new group, or we bring more people on board to this committee.
Or maybe reach out to the chamber and the Downtown Middleton Business Association, those groups to try to get them to make a point of sending somebody on their behalf to plan commission and council meetings.
I didn't get the sense that coalition itself was a city committee. It was more of a informal group, wasn't it?
Right, right. It was kind of outside the city government apparatus, but it was still kind of a community organization.
Right.
And she had really punchy, the main focus is supply, stability, and subsidy. So streamline the rules to make supply side easier. Resources for stability with case manager, short-term rental assistance, and tenant resources. And then subsidy, which was the part that was the housing fund, I think, with more of the loan programs and stuff. And did she say that her case, she would say, I don't know if she said that their case managers have it or if she wanted to give it to them, but was funds for the case managers to provide short-term rental assistance. I'd have to go back and look at the recording again, but yeah.
One thing I don't remember the details on that specific one, but one other thing I wanted to circle back on is for kind of that question of how high level versus in the details for the plan. I think that would be something really helpful for I think this might be part of the FAQs or wherever it fits best, but I know everybody here has a pretty good sense of, first we're establishing just the buckets that the Affordable Housing Fund would be spending money within, and then, later council could approve the specific programs as they get rolled out and more further refined. And I think one of the things I took away from Becky's talk was kind of laying out what that process is going to look like early on for council, so that council knows that they're still in the driver's seat every step of the way. This isn't you approve it and then never see it again, and then some details pop up that you never heard about. You want to make sure that everything is, the process is going through the right steps, and that they know that, what the next predictable steps are for approving different pieces of it.
So we think the initial affordable housing plan, like you said, kind of lay out the buckets and the areas that we would work in, with the expectation that the CDA is now going to go out and make specific plans in each one of these areas and bring them back to council.
That's at least the way that Sun Prairie did it, and that seemed to overall work for them once they kind of moved forward. Was kind of fleshing out. In either way, if it was like a revolving loan fund, for example, you'd want to update the terms within that loan fund each year. So, based on different interest rates or, experience learned over time. So I think that seemed like a wise approach when she was presenting. That was the way that they did it. But
And
ultimately, it's our plan, so we can do it however we want.
and she had been hired by that point, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, I really see our current staff doesn't have the capacity to add a big, huge project like this. Or let me rephrase that. We can't afford to take a staff person away from their regular planning duties and put them on this full time. So hiring a full-time staff person to write up the actual details, maybe their recommendations every year, maybe it's recommendations every 3 years to give the process a chance to work itself out. But yeah, I see the new person in the planning department having that job.
All right. Any other discussion points on this one? Okay, next one is the Smart Growth Workshop, which was in May, early June. Yeah. Lisa, Jeremy, and I went over to the east side and heard all about smart growth, which I learned is legislative language from the state of Wisconsin about how we structure housing in Wisconsin. Anybody want to take first crack at this one?
I'll give a little rundown of what it looks like. The first presentation, I think, was Dr. Kurt Paulson. who talked about a lot of numbers and statistics about the current state of housing in Dane County, and he showed off the big squeeze graph. I know when I was acclimating with the committee before I hopped onto my first meeting, I watched one of his presentations, and that graph was famous for me, so I was really happy to see it in person, as goofy as that sounds. Um, After that, someone from Hovde Properties talked about the developer saga, and he went in detail over this long, I think it was an hour and a half presentation about all the things a developer has to go through from due diligence to capital planning, design, zoning, permitting, and construction, and how long each of those steps can take, and how one pushes another one further, and so on, which was interesting and informative. After that, someone from CNAIR talked about affordable housing financing and development and some details about what that looks like, especially as it's particular to affordable housing as opposed to just generic market housing. Someone from Murphy Desmond LLC talked about legal issues and questions in Dane County. He moved a little bit too quickly through the slides for me to keep good notes on it, but after that, there was another presentation. I didn't note who presented, but they talked about the real cost of housing in Dane County. They gave a lot of details about average costs of lots, of building, of labor, and of materials, et cetera, all around the area, which was very interesting and insightful as well, especially as how lot prices have grown up incredibly over the last few years. And then someone at the end of the day talked about Point Gardens, a development that's still being made in Poinet, I think it is. I believe it was affordable housing development. I think it was very utopian in how it included some really nice features that people would want to see in affordable housing that doesn't always often make it to the actual streets. Community gardens, very, very thin roadways, a very small footprint, something that seemed very ecologically stable and generally pleasant and walkable. That's what notes I had to talk about for this.
Awesome. Yeah, that the one presenter was Jason Thomas, the one with the office down next to Grace Coffee. And he talked, I think, largely with his work in town of Middleton, which has eye-wateringly high median home prices. Yeah, I think the most interesting thing was the juxtaposition of his cost constraints with Randy's cost constraints with that Poignette development. Jason Thomas primarily being kind of a one house at a time, although he manages a large profile of buildings going around, versus Randy, who's trying to plop in like how many units? 520 units in a really condensed area, and how Randy can make or was able to make some of the numbers work at that scale that I don't think are accessible for a smaller builder like Jason Thomas.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Paulson is an old friend of the committee. We have had him come several times. I think he was on the committee for some time. Big Squeeze is in our FAQ as well. We tried to play with some different things, and then we just came full circle back to his original slide.
It's a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very good. He's on Plan Commission now, and every time we're both in council chambers for that meeting, he always tells me afterwards, before I even ask, I really have to get on the committee. I know I have to get on the workforce housing committee, and I don't have the heart to tell him we're running out of time because
We're killing it.
yeah.
We're going
But-
into action mode.
Yeah. Alan, did you have more to add?
There was a couple of Kurt, talking about kind of like the laws in which housing prices behave under, and how you can affect those prices by basically those prices and costs respond to markets, and changes in those markets change the price. And we have the benefit of living in a very nice place with lots of amenities that a lot of people want to live to. And that means things are going to be more expensive. And that is the reality. And the alternative is living in a place where there is no growth and there's no jobs and nobody wants to live, but lots of affordable housing. And he'd rather pick this problem every day than the other. But that comes with some responsibility for everybody to make it equitable for, people affected by that big squeeze phenomena. So I was kind of like that of like, it is markets. This is what we're dealing with. This is how people make decisions in large groups, is through markets. And you need to take action understanding the environment that you're working in. Yeah, for the Hovde one, it was good to see the breakdown of like, it's like a 3 to 5 year timeline to, I think I want to build this thing, and okay, we built this thing. And that 3 to 5 years is time that they are not making money and often spending money to be able to ameliorate risk at another step of the project. So things like the zoning plan, streamlining and making it clear that there are kind of objective criteria to different phase points in a project, and that the phase points can resolve quickly so that they can keep things moving. That is a big help to developers of either for-profit or nonprofit to be able to make numbers work, because delays and time cost them a scary amount of money, I think. It's like, I'm not a housing developer because maybe I probably don't have that risk tolerance, but it was good to hear from them. Nicole?
Sinair.
Yeah, Sinair. We've heard from other kind of nonprofit builders before, and she had lots of very similar things to say there. I think the thing that I took away was kind of almost a commodities market in companies can provide capital, and that effectively buys them federal tax credits to reduce their tax liability. So that capital is a way that nonprofit developers can make financing work in much the same way that we intend our plan to kind of provide less expensive money to developers to fill the gap to make a project work. Any for-profit company can buy these credits and provide the capital to get reduced tax liability. And what was shocking is that those trade at like 77% of their value. So you would pay $770,000 for a $1 million tax liability reduction in this market. And then I found the lawyer who presented from Murphy Desmond was kind of directly applicable to some current events that were happening in the Old Sauk area development, and I think is still ongoing, where what legal levers exist for people to encourage more building or discourage more building, and a lot of it is making sure that if you want more housing, your approval plan needs to consider and be consistent with your overall plan. And anything inconsistent or not in line with your housing plan can be challenged, because the statutes are that you have to have a plan, and then you have to approve and build things according to that plan. And I think that's probably an especially helpful thing to share with council and the planning commission about when we are evaluating these things, or when we are talking about these things in conditional use meetings, that it needs to be done in a way that's consistent with our overall plan. And that was kind of interesting to see. So the Old Sauk, the judge sent it back to the Madison Planning Commission to say, you made this a decision not considering your plan, so the Planning Commission has to rehear the development, and then we'll see what happens from there. But I think neighborhood or persons in the neighborhood successfully challenged the decision in court. It was sent back to their Planning Commission, which, as previous topic, time is money to the developers to the point where they may opt out and go find a more feasible project to work. Yeah, those are some of my ones. Lisa, what'd you have an add on?
I'll go through the same list of speakers, of course. So Kurt Paulson, and what I took from his presentation, because I've seen it several times, but what really stood out for me is his comment that in Wisconsin, through our comprehensive plans, which is the plan you're talking about, that's the one that the Madison Plan Commission, I guess, hadn't explicitly documented that they considered the comprehensive plan as they were reviewing that old SOC development. But in Wisconsin, through our comprehensive plans, municipalities are required, quote, to provide an adequate housing supply that meets existing and forecasted housing demand in the local governmental unit. He went on to say, like, there's no enforcement mechanism for this, but that is an obligation that state law puts on municipalities, which can help with messaging to explain why we allow so much development to take place, because that is a big concern people have. He also said it's a violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act for elected officials or a municipality to express a preference for a particular type of resident, and by extension, housing, like residents who would live in apartments. People can't say, oh, we don't want to build apartments because we don't want that type of, we don't want people who don't have roots in the community, that type of thing. Not supposed to do that. Ethan from Hovde said three things that really hit home. One was how sometimes his timeline will get blown out when review delays lead to changes. And I right away thought of Pheasant Crossing, which is going in. Plan Commission had considered it several times. They went to many different committees, and then they came back to Plan Commission for what should have been, I think would have been like the final approval from us. And then the parks, which is their right, the parks board said, we want land for a park. We don't want to allow you to just pay a fee in lieu. We want you to also dedicate some parkland. So that meant the developer had to go back, find a parcel that would work, and then redo their plans to try to work that house, that lot that was no longer going to be a house, rework that somewhere else. So I thought of that one. He also emphasized how hard it is to predict the future. And he said, can have a good relationship with the staff, the alder from the district and the plan commission, and then there's a veer, and that is exactly what happened with the Terrace Avenue project that didn't go forward. The staff were supportive, the alder, from what I understand, was supportive, and then the plan commission didn't like it at first, but they came back with a modified plan, and we were like, yes, we like that, but that was another 2 weeks at least, probably a month. And then the Plan Commission recommended it unanimously, and the council rejected it because it would have required amending the comprehensive plan to change the future land use of this one parcel. So we have an example of that. And then he also mentioned that landscaping is often a problem, because maybe your TIF incentive is tied to it and you have to put it in even though it's going to die over winter, and you'll have to spend $50,000 replacing it in the spring. And I thought, yeah, we got to make sure that is not in our requirements.
It was, I think, not just the TIF financing, it was like occupancy as well. Like occupancy was sometimes incumbent on planting trees in September. And you're just like,
Right. Nicole from Scenario Solutions, I really liked her suggestion to have a meeting before. This kind of goes back to the issue of a park dedication being required for the first time at the late end of the process of review. She suggested having a meeting before, coming up with all the comments, and everybody getting on the same page going forward, and making sure everybody recognizes the trade-offs that we might not be aware of. She also suggested putting in writing what the handoff is from the Plan Commission to permitting. That came up with Bell Farm. There was an issue with permitting of accessory dwelling units that was unanticipated, right? You know, it's pretty clear in our zoning code what the requirements are. But then when they went to pull the permits for these ADUs, they hit a roadblock. So she said, break down the wall between what was discussed and what needs to occur. And then she also said that on parking, she said, we've done a ton of development and we know what kind of parking we need. And that's an argument I made to the Plan Commission when we were still considering the changes to the zoning code. He said, why, I had heard elsewhere that a best practice in modernizing zoning codes is to eliminate the minimum parking requirements. And I said, why don't we just go all the way and eliminate those? Because shouldn't we let the market decide, right? I mean, the people aren't going to be able to rent apartments unless they provide enough parking to meet their needs, and they'll base that on performance elsewhere, you know, and what their experience in this field has shown. And Nicole said basically that. Randy Alexander from Torque Companies, he said he talked a lot about how 90% of construction workers travel from outside the county. They can't afford to live here, and it's getting harder to get them to come to do the work because it's such a long trip for them. And he said labor rates don't need to go down, they need to go up. And then I liked that Point Gardens, which I think we're going to talk about, maybe inviting someone to come talk to us about that. The every home having a garden was underwritten by the Burpee Seed Company. That was really neat. And their water retention basins are stocked with fish, which is interesting. So, oh, and that one development increased the size of Poinette by 30%, which should have been, I would have expected the other 70% to be like, whoa, this is way too much, you know? Why are so many people coming here? But apparently they were very supportive. So I like that. Oh, and actually Nicole, going back to Nicole from Scenario Solutions, she did say that in addition to all the other needs they have, local business support and supportive service agencies were needed too. And she specifically said people need to be given support, not just a box. So it's like a common theme.
Any questions, responses? Ben or
Here,
Amy?
but that's a great summary. Thanks for that.
Sorry, no questions from here. I honestly really appreciate the recap, though. Thank you.
All right. Last meeting recap, way forward. This was back June. We met with Ellen, Leslie, and Taylor from Way Forward. We got a nice tour of the pantry as well.
Mm-hmm. And it is Hunger Action Month right now. So they're trying to gather 25,000 pounds of food this month in donations. And again, the big takeaway for me there was the need for the social services to help people. I think Taylor said it increases or it improves the outcomes by 20%, like the length of time that people will succeed, or the number of people who succeed in staying in their homes. So I think that was a critical comment for me to hear, because I didn't really think about it, because I didn't need those resources. I knew how to, I grew up in a different environment that was very stable. But if you've grown up or spent, a good chunk of your life in a in a situation where you are housing insecure, why would we think people are going to be able to manage? You know, it's not within their experience. So I thought that was a critical piece.
Just
Yeah, it
saying
was.
that I think, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Ben.
Just to say, you mentioned the 20%, but I think actually that 20% didn't apply to, like, it wasn't like the cases they did had 20% success rate. I mean, the cases they had a very high success rate, right? So I think, but that's why I was impressed by just how effective that program has been.
Of the people who participated in the housing stability programs, I think it was 98% maintained housing from my notes.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah.
All right, we'll have to get the exact number from Way Forward and make sure that makes its way into our affordable housing action plan.
Yeah. I like there's a lot of crossover with Way Forward and what the school district has to manage or what they inherit from the students that they serve. That eviction or housing instability is an adverse childhood event, which has a long tail of effects through a child's life. But the immediate consequences are seen in our school district. So thinking about it, affordable housing as not just for adults, but for children and kind of the long tail of their lives that they have yet to experience, that we can improve the outcomes over a much longer time frame than now. The other one was that the nonprofit developers are required to have a memorandum of understanding with a case management group, but there's very little as far as like concrete service levels that need to be provided. So Way Forward was under pressure to sign those memorandums of understanding to get affordable housing in our area, but they are constrained by their own resources on what services they're actually able to provide. So I think that for me bumped up the case management. Definitely seems like it should be one of our initiatives, especially when we can say, 98% of the cases that caseworkers are involved with pay their rent, right? Like we can help developers in that way as well. But a cool group to have in our backyard.
I think it's also impressive how the majority of their funds were from individual donations, and I appreciated how persuasively and concisely they described some of their impact on the community. Some of my favorite numbers were near the end of their presentation. They gave 271,000 in emergency assistance to residents in Middleton in 2024, and 323,000 to its Connections program, distributing funds to 662 households last year, which is no small number of people who were almost certainly helped immensely by that.
Yeah, I've volunteered there since 2018, and it's a really impressive organization, and it's all about, helping people afford to live in Middleton, basically. The pantry is open to people outside of the city. But there are services where they do the case management and the provide help with security deposits or rent um, or utilities or auto repair, that's limited to Middleton residents. And it's very much like it's like developers having to come up with the money, with the funding stack. That's what the support from Way Forward is. It's just part of the stack. You can't possibly give out enough in assistance to pay a full security deposit. Maybe it'll come to like 1/5 of it. But that's what they can do. That's what they do. And they help people find the other resources to make up the rest of that stack.
All right. Next one is a discussion of inviting Randy or someone else from the Point Garden Development to, yeah, present to us on what they're doing up in Point Yet.
I think it sounds good. I think it's a good idea to invite them to this.
Do you think it's one that we would do with the joint commission or the joint group, or with plan commission, or with the other alders?
I think I would do it just for us. We can always record it. And actually, I think it would be nice to be in person, like we were for Becky's presentation, but I think if the speaker doesn't want to come all the way out here, that's fine too, as long as they have a good internet connection and are willing to appear on Zoom. And then having that video to share with council and others would be important.
Is, so not doing it jointly with CDA. I realize we didn't do Becky jointly with CDA, but not, is there a particular reason not to do it jointly with CDA, given the joint work on the
Like
project?
during our next joint meeting with them.
Or I guess, or with the reason for not having the point, yeah, having the presentation joint, I guess, because it's more kind of a scheduling complexity.
I think that, and
Possibly,
also a joint meeting would have additional quorum requirements for each
Got it.
component of the group. And so I think the easiest way for quorum would be we could also invite them to come. On all of our agendas, we have a little blurb of, quorum of other members might be present, but aren't going to take action. So,
Okay, I think that makes
um,
sense.
yeah, so we can certainly invite them to come to that as well and give them a good amount of heads up. And then maybe put that at the top of the meeting. So if folks want to come by, listen to that, and then this committee can continue on with other agenda items. That could be a good setup for that kind of meeting.
There a requirement for any kind of motion to extend an invitation, or we just kind of collectively say, yep, that sounds like a good idea. Let's see if we can set it up.
yeah, that's fine. I don't think we
right.
need a motion.
Okay, any other future agenda items?
I had asked, I think it was last month, I asked Mayor Kuhn to come speak to CDA and workforce housing jointly, because I don't know if you saw the press release. If we talked about this, please stop me. But she went out to Albuquerque to a mayor's conference and gave a talk on housing in Middleton and her survey. And I said, that's the first I've seen of, like, I guess I did maybe see some of the results reported maybe at a plan commission meeting. But I asked her to come give the presentation to us at our next joint meeting. And then also I wanted to let the members, well, no, I guess Scott and Abby already sent out the notice about our regional housing strategy webinar on Thursday about senior housing.
Yep.
That's at 3 o'clock. I think that'll be really interesting. I think there's something else that I wanted to tell folks. I think it's Madison on their website. They've got an RFP for affordable housing development. I'll just find it and share it later. It just struck me as kind of the type of thing we need to start thinking about and make sure that we have access to other municipalities' work so that we can lighten our load a little bit. So I'll try to find that and share it.
One of
Lisa,
those-
that's the RFP, I think it is. I believe I that's somebody I've worked with in the past on kind of through our professional organization, APA Wisconsin, Matt Frater. So would that be something you'd like to maybe have somebody from Madison come in and talk about their affordable housing programs?
Yeah, especially if they can tailor it to us, right? And share what they think, would be usable from their work in a smaller, less abundantly staffed city.
Okay. Yeah, I can reach out and see if he's available.
That was a topic with the Sun Prairie Planner was what can we do better across our municipalities? Because she was very complimentary of the stuff that Middleton had already done, and we were really complimentary of the stuff that she had already done. So it was this big love fest of us trying to copy each other to accomplish similar goals, which I thought was very nice. But talking about what are the things that we might be more effective at a county level, and that might be another interesting question to ask our Madison friends with in the context of how they set up their stuff and how we might move forward, because we're all trying to recreate the wheel, but not reinvent it. It's already been invented. We just need to build it. All right. Any other future agenda topics to cover today? Otherwise, we can adjourn at a timely 6:30 p.m.
Very timely. Thank you. And thank you, Amy, for darting in and saving us.
Sorry.
Really
I was like
appreciate
driving
it.
like a maniac back from the Redden fields. I'm like, I gotta get back to this piece. Sorry, I missed the actual stroke of the 30, but I'll do better next time.
Thank
The
you,
Verona cops
everybody.
didn't catch me.
All right.
Bye, all.
Good evening.
Bye,
Good to see you
everyone.
all.
Bye.
Thank you.